Let's talk about the switch statement, which is another form of flow of control. Let's put a couple of lines of code here so we can see what that might look like. And we'll start with the idea of an if statement. So we want to check something out, some value, let's say x, and whether or not it's equal to 0, for example. All right, well, that means I must need an x. So let's give it a value of, let's say, 2. And then we have an if statement that walks through and says if s is 0, then we do something. And if x is, let's say, 1, then we do something else. And if x is 2, then we do a third thing. Oops. And if x is anything else, then we do that last thing, whatever it is. And of course, what we're actually doing here makes no difference whatsoever. It's just a matter of a sequence of statements. All right, so if we have this situation where we have a variable, x, that's discrete and with a limited set of values, then we can use an if statement, as you can see, but we can also use something called switch. And so it works in a similar way. I'm going to go ahead and just convert this. I'll copy it so we can have the original to compare to, but I'm going to go ahead and change that into a switch statement, and it would look like this. So instead of saying if, we'll say switch. And we're going to switch on a particular variable, or value, which is x. And rather than having a curly braces there, well, we're going to have curly braces, sorry, but rather than saying else, we're going to say case. And the case is the value that x could be, and in this case, that's 1. So case 1, colon. Now notice that 1 is, I'll make that a block statement, that 1 is known at compile time, and in fact, that's required. So the value that you're comparing your variable against has to be known at compile time. All right, so that's that first one. The next one would be case 2. Get rid of that. And the last one would be default. Like so. All right. And unlike the if statement where we use curly braces, we're actually not going to need those. I'm going to get rid of these curly braces. I'm going to do something that performs the same task. Okay. Oh, didn't I have a 0? Yeah, I forgot to put the case 0. Let me put that in. Case 0. All right, and then I have as many lines of code as I want. So unlike the if statement, where if I wanted multiple lines, I needed the curly braces. With a switch statement, I don't need that. So let me just put an output statement here, case 0 or something. And I can, in fact, have as many lines of code as I want after the case statement. But you'll note that we got a squiggly line here. And what this says is after the break, or sorry, after the case, you at some point in some line for that block of code, you have to say break. So break is the way that it knows it should no longer be executing code. And in fact, it wants one of those for every one of its cases, like so. And just so we have, again, something to put in there. And then finally default. And default itself actually needs a break statement. It turns out the default doesn't actually have to go last. It's typically listed last, but if you would like, for whatever reason, to put it first or in the middle or wherever else, that's legal, unlike some other languages. Okay, so if it makes sense to say this is what we're going to do most of the time, that which would be default, then that's fine. So if it's not 0, 1, or 2, then we're going to do this stuff. And again, to show that code can't go there, default case, like so. All right, so the important things to remember is you're switching on a specific discrete value that typically has a limited set of values. Default catches everything you don't explicitly state that you're interested in. Every one of the case statements must have a break, and then you have your case statements themselves, and they have to have values or represent values that are known at compile time. Okay. There's one other thing. If, for example, you wanted to collect a couple of cases together because you're going to do the same thing. Let's say case 1 and 0 were effectively the same, or in fact the same. What you can do is you actually take this code out. And that says that for default, we do this. For case 0 and case 1, so you could read this as case 0 and case 1, you do this. Okay, that's what that is. But at any rate, for each of those, you will need a break statement in place. You put in code like that. Now, you'll notice that before I said that the switch statement works with discrete types. In particular, what it does not do is not floating point types. Okay, as well as the other more complex types and whatnot. But what I did want you to notice is that part of discrete is enumeration. So, for example, if we said enum color here, oops, red, green, and blue, we can also have, say, a variable of type color. And it doesn't really matter whether I initialize it to something or not. But just to have something to look at, I'll say that. And then we can create a switch statement that would work with paint. And we could say, just as we did before, with the numbers, but in this time the numerals, case red, and then we could do some code or not, case blue, again, some code or not. Case green. And default. Of course, this doesn't have any code in it, but the idea is that the code can go somewhere between the colon and the word break. Okay. So that's the switch statement.